We all know that feeling, don't we? That um, familiar tension rising, maybe a disagreement starting to bubble over,
Mm.
maybe into a full-blown argument.
Yeah, it happens.
Could be about the dishes or forgotten plans or sometimes, yeah, something much deeper. It's just a universal truth of human connection, isn't it? Every couple fights.
It's pretty much a given.
It really is. But here's the thing that's fascinating. It's not that we fight, it's how we fight. That's what truly defines our relationships, or at least has a huge impact.
Exactly. The process, not just the event.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today. Our source material for this deep dive is, well, incredibly insightful. It's the Couple Therapy Workbook by the brilliant Dr. Nader Attalla.
And a really practical resource.
Totally. And this isn't just, abstract theory. It's a structured, evidence-based roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
It helps navigate one of life's most challenging, but also maybe most profound aspects of any close relationship.
Conflict. Yeah, conflict. That thing we usually try to avoid.
Right. But our mission today is clear.
Yeah.
This isn't about avoiding conflict because, honestly, that's probably impossible, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And maybe not even desirable.
Good point. Instead, it's about transforming it, turning it into a powerful force for, maybe, growth, for deeper connection, building a relationship that's not just resilient, but actually thriving.
Learning to use it constructively.
Think of it like learning a whole new language, a language for those really difficult, sometimes painful conversations. Okay, so let's unpack this. We want to equip you, listening right now, with some practical tools, not just ideas.
Absolutely. Actionable stuff. What's fascinating here is that the very premise challenges our kind of ingrained perception of conflict.
Oh, so?
Well, we're often taught to fear it, right? Or avoid it.
Yeah.
Or we see it as some kind of sign that the relationship is failing.
Yeah, definitely. If we fight, something must be wrong.
Exactly. But as you said, the research, and certainly Dr. Attalla's work, consistently shows that conflict itself isn't the core problem. It's truly how we engage with it that determines the outcome.
I think so many of us, maybe subconsciously, walk into relationships with this silent hope for, I don't know, a fairy tale, an argument-free existence.
The dream, right.
Yeah. And then we feel like we've failed when reality inevitably hits and disagreements happen. But Dr. Attalla's work really hammers home this core idea.
Mm-hmm.
Every couple fights. The goal isn't being conflict-free.
It can't be.
It's about becoming conflict-resilient. And that distinction, that feels huge. It shifts the entire way you think about it.
It really does. And that reality, the fact that conflict happens, often stems from some very common, very understandable sources.
Like what kinds of things typically spark it?
Well, conflict often arises from things like unmet needs. Maybe one partner needs more verbal affirmation, the other needs more space or independence. Simple things, but important.
Okay, unmet needs. Makes sense.
It's also frequently born from simple miscommunications, where intentions get misunderstood or words are just interpreted differently than they were meant.
Oh yeah, the classic, that's not what I meant
Yeah,
scenario.
totally. Then there's the external pressure of stress jobs, finances, family stuff that can lower everyone's tolerance.
For sure. Stress makes everything harder.
And don't forget unresolved baggage from past experiences, maybe previous relationships, or even childhood. Plus, just fundamental differences in core values or expectations about life or the relationship itself.
Wow. Okay. So there's a mix of internal stuff, external pressures, and just differences.
Pretty much. And when these sources bubble up, arguments can manifest in all sorts of ways. You might have loud, fiery debates.
The classic shouting match.
Or you might see cold, silent tension, the silent treatment, or even passive-aggressive jabs.
Ugh, those can be the worst sometimes.
They can be really corrosive, but the form of the argument, whether it's loud or quiet, isn't actually as important as the underlying dynamic and, crucially, how it's handled.
That's where Dr. Attalla's metaphor comes in, right? The one about conflict being like a storm. I found that really powerful.
It is a great metaphor. Explain how you see it.
Well, like you said, a storm can rage and just destroy everything. It can tear down the very bridge connecting you and your partner, leave things in ruins.
The destructive force.
Absolutely. Or that same storm can pass through, maybe clear the air, bring some much-needed rain, wash things clean, and ultimately you might find the path forward is actually stronger, more resilient.
Right. It can clear out the underbrush, so to speak.
Exactly. And the distinction, as the book points out, lies entirely in the tools you choose to use during that storm. Do you default to those destructive habits, like blame or shutting down emotionally?
The go-to reactions when we feel threatened.
Or do you consciously reach for something different? Skills like constructive communication, genuine repair efforts.
And this choice, this conscious selection of tools, has really profound implications for the relationship long term.
How so? What are the stakes here?
Well, if we consistently use poor conflict resolution strategies, blame, contempt, stonewalling, defensiveness, those kinds of things, it leads to what the workbook calls relationship erosion.
Erosion, and that's gradual but damaging.
It is. Resentment starts to build up little by little, like dripping water wearing away stone. It creates emotional distance. Partners who once felt like a team, like allies,
Yeah.
they begin to see each other as adversaries, opponents in a battle.
That's a sad image.
It is. And over time, these unresolved conflicts, they don't just magically disappear, they accumulate. They build up like sediment, creating these invisible walls that make true connection, true intimacy almost impossible.
You can almost picture those walls forming brick by brick with every bad argument, can't you?
Yeah,
Making it harder and harder to actually reach the other person.
exactly. It's like they're in the same room, but miles apart emotionally.
It's like a slow emotional drain, isn't it? Just sucking the lifeblood out of the relationship over time.
Precisely. It depletes the goodwill, the affection, the trust. But, and this is crucial, here's the powerful counterpoint. Healthy conflict, when it's handled skillfully with the right tools,
Yeah, what happens then?
it actually builds stronger relationships. Disagreements, when they're approached with care and respect, become these invaluable opportunities.
Opportunities. How? Fighting doesn't feel like an opportunity usually.
I get that. But think about it. These moments teach you so much about yourself, your own triggers, your default reactions, your communication blind spots,
Okay, self-awareness.
and even more about your partner. Conflict often reveals those deeply held needs, the core values, maybe even vulnerabilities that just don't surface during calm, everyday life.
Things that might otherwise stay hidden.
Exactly. And when these hidden things are exposed and they're met not with attack, but with understanding, maybe validation, that truly deepens intimacy.
Wow. So the argument itself becomes a doorway.
It can be. Every argument, then, isn't just a problem to avoid. It's potentially an opportunity for repair, for growth, for renewed understanding. It's like getting rich data, valuable information about what truly matters to each of you and where your relationship needs attention or tending.
That reframes it completely. From threat to data.
And this ability to handle conflict well, it's not about some innate talent that only a few lucky couples possess. That's a myth.
Really. It sometimes feels like some people are just naturally better at it.
It might look that way, but the difference between couples who grow through conflict and those who just suffer through it or break apart because of it is usually a set of learnable skills.
Learnable. That's the key word.
Absolutely. We're talking about tangible tools, things like mutual validation, really hearing each other, the ability to set clear, respectful boundaries, using structured communication techniques, especially when things get heated.
You mentioned a couple earlier dealing with social needs.
Ah, yes. They were stuck. One was very extroverted, loved big gatherings. The other was deeply introverted, needed quiet recharge time. Their weekends were constant battles.
Sounds familiar for many couples.
Right. But as they learned to actually voice the needs underneath, I need connection, I need calm, and crucially, to validate each other's feelings, even though they were different.
What happened?
They discovered a shared underlying fear, a fear of loneliness, oddly enough, that was manifesting in these opposite ways. Realizing that the deeper layer transformed their whole approach. It wasn't a battle over the calendar anymore.
It became about meeting that shared fear.
Exactly. They found creative compromises built in specific connection time and separate recharge time, and their bond actually deepened because they understood each other on that fundamental level. The conflict forced that deeper understanding.
That's such an empowering thought. It really means anyone can learn to do this better. Okay, so for you listening right now, just take a moment, reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever felt conflict truly eroding a relationship? Maybe building those walls we just talked about.
That feeling of growing distance.
Yeah. Or maybe conversely, have you ever experienced a conflict that, even though it was really hard, actually led to some kind of breakthrough? Maybe a deeper understanding or a feeling of renewed connection afterwards. What did that feel like? Just notice that. All right, let's turn to where it gets really interesting and maybe a little uncomfortable for a second. Before we dive into all the shiny new tools for better communication.
The how-to.
Right. It's absolutely crucial, as Dr. Attalla's work emphasizes, to first identify the patterns that are currently causing damage.
You have to know what you're trying to fix.
Exactly. These aren't just minor annoyances. These are often deep-seated habits, and they actually create more conflict. They don't resolve anything. And frankly, they can be painful to recognize in ourselves.
Definitely. But recognition is the first step towards change, always.
So how does the workbook categorize these?
It groups them pretty clearly. There are aggressive patterns, passive patterns, and then these mental habits that act as blocks to really listening.
Okay, let's start with aggressive. What does that look like?
Aggressive patterns are the more direct attacks. They wound, they alienate. Think about blaming.
Okay.
This is where you make everything your partner's fault. There's a refusal to acknowledge any role you might play, even a small one.
Can you give an example?
Sure, if you find yourself constantly saying things like, "It's always your fault we're late," or "If you hadn't done X, then Y wouldn't have happened," that's blame. It just puts the other person on the defensive immediately.
Oh, that's such a common one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It instantly shuts down any productive conversation because the other person just feels attacked right from the start.
Right.
No room to move.
Absolutely. Zero room. Another aggressive pattern is belittling. This one goes beyond the specific behavior and attacks the person's character, their intelligence, or their fundamental worth.
Ouch. Like insults.
Exactly. Phrases like, "You're so stupid," or "How can you be so incompetent," or "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." It's designed to diminish the other person, to make them feel small.
That's incredibly damaging.
Highly. And then there's kitchen sinking. This is a classic.
Ugh. The kitchen sink. I have a feeling I know this one.
You probably do. It's when you drag up every single past grievance, related or unrelated, and throw them all into the current argument.
Like a laundry list of past failures.
Precisely. Instead of staying focused on the immediate issue, say, "A forgotten chore today," you might say, "This is just like when you forgot my birthday 2 years ago and that time you didn't call when you were late and you never listened to me." And
It just spirals.
it escalates rapidly, becomes completely overwhelming, and you lose track of the original point entirely. The goal shifts from solving this problem to proving the other person is fundamentally flawed.
Oof. Kitchen sinking. Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to doing that or having it done to us, sadly. It's like a verbal grenade, just spraying shrapnel from every past fight. Hard to recover from.
Very hard. It makes repair almost impossible in that moment. Other aggressive ones include things like threatening, ultimatums. "If you do that again, I'm leaving," or threatening consequences to control behavior. And direct name calling, just resorting to labels that attack someone's identity. "You're such a child," "You're a bitch," "You're an idiot," all designed to wound.
Okay, so those are the more overt aggressive patterns. But it's equally important, you said, to look at the quieter ones, the passive patterns.
Yes, absolutely. Because these are often more insidious, maybe harder to pinpoint, but they are just as damaging to trust and connection, even if they don't involve direct yelling or insults.
So what falls into this category?
Well, a major one is shutting down. This is when someone goes completely silent during a conflict. They might physically walk away, refuse to make eye contact, or just emotionally withdraw.
The silent treatment.
Exactly. It's often called the stonewall effect in relationship research. It feels like you're talking to a brick wall and your partner is completely inaccessible. It sends a message of rejection, of "you're not worth engaging with."
That sounds incredibly frustrating and lonely for the person on the receiving end.
Deeply. Another one is avoiding, just refusing to discuss problems altogether. Changing the subject, saying, "Can we just drop it?" Not as a temporary pause, but as a permanent dismissal of the issue.
Sweeping it under the rug.
Precisely, until the rug is so lumpy you trip over it constantly. Then there's false agreement, saying, yeah, whatever you say, or you're right, just to end the conflict, but without any genuine resolution or intention to change.
So it stops the fight in the moment, but nothing actually gets solved.
Exactly. The underlying issue remains, festering. And then the one you mentioned earlier, passive aggression.
Yes, the subtle jabs.
Expressing anger or frustration indirectly, through sarcasm, maybe making pointed jokes that aren't really jokes, or conveniently forgetting to do things they know are important to you, withholding affection or help as a form of punishment.
Like that example, oh, did I forget to pick that up? Oops. Knowing full well it was important.
Right. It leaves the other person feeling confused, resentful, and like they can't quite put their finger on what's wrong, but they know something is off. It creates this undercurrent of tension.
It's almost like a dark comedy sometimes, isn't it? We all know someone, or maybe, let's be honest, have even been that someone who pulls out the martyr card. That feels passive, too.
Definitely falls under passive patterns. Martyrdom.
Fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Sigh. I always do everything around here anyway. You can almost hear the tiny violins playing in the background.
Exactly. Playing the victim, sacrificing yourself, but making sure your partner knows about your suffering, often with sighs, eye rolls, or pointed comments.
But beneath that performance, there's real pain, isn't there?
Yeah.
Real resentment building. And it's just as destructive as the yelling, maybe more so because it's so indirect and hard to address head on.
Absolutely. It breeds resentment on both sides. The martyr feels unseen and unappreciated, and the partner feels manipulated and guilty. And the irony is, while it might get a temporary compliance, okay, fine, you do the task, it's poisoning the well of connection and mutual respect.
Yeah, it's not building a partnership.
Not at all. So beyond these behavioral patterns, the aggressive and the passive, the workbook also highlights these blocks to listening. These are mental habits that prevent true understanding, even if you're physically present and looking like you're listening.
Okay, so even if I'm sitting there quietly, nodding along, I might not actually be listening.
Precisely. Your brain is doing something else. Consider mind reading.
Assuming you know what they're thinking.
Exactly. Assuming you know what your partner thinks or feels or means without actually asking them, you jump to conclusions based on your own filters or past experiences. I know what you're really thinking. Or you're just saying that because.
It closes the door to finding out what they actually think or feel.
Completely. Another huge one is rehearsing. While your partner is talking, you're not actually absorbing their words. Instead, you're busy planning your rebuttal. You're composing your brilliant comeback in your head.
Guilty as charged sometimes. Your brain is just racing ahead to your turn.
It's very common, especially when we feel attacked. But it means you miss crucial nuances, or maybe the core message your partner is trying to convey. You're preparing for battle, not understanding.
What else blocks listening?
There's filtering, only hearing what confirms your existing narrative or bias. You pick out the bits that support your point of view and ignore the rest. It's like confirmation bias in arguments.
So you only hear evidence for your side.
Pretty much. And judging. Evaluating and dismissing your partner's feelings or perspective as wrong, stupid, or irrational, rather than seeking to understand where they're coming from. That's a ridiculous thing to feel, or you shouldn't be upset about that.
That shuts things down fast.
Instantly. And finally, comparing. Instead of empathizing with your partner's experience, you immediately think about how your experience is different, often worse. You think that's bad. Let me tell you about what happened to me. It turns the focus back on you instead of offering support or understanding.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of ways we can mess up communication without even realizing it sometimes. So when we see these patterns, whether it's blaming or shutting down or mind reading in ourselves or our partners, it's easy to just label them as bad behavior, full stop.
Right, to just get angry or frustrated.
But Dr. Attalla really challenges us to look deeper, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
The workbook encourages developing almost an uncomfortable empathy, trying to understand why these destructive habits even exist in the first place.
That's where the real insight begins, shifting from judgment to curiosity.
So why do people do these things? It seems counterproductive.
It often is, in the long run. But most often, these patterns are not rooted in malice. They're usually misguided attempts at self-preservation or clumsy ways of trying to get needs met.
Self-preservation.
Well, think about it. People often resort to blame when they feel incredibly vulnerable or ashamed of themselves. Attacking feels safer than admitting fault.
Okay, offense is the best defense.
Kind of. People might shut down and withdraw the stonewalling when they perceive conflict as inherently dangerous or overwhelming, perhaps based on past trauma or family experiences. Silence feels safer than engagement.
Right. If engaging always leads to pain, you stop engaging.
Exactly. And individuals might use passive aggression when direct communication feels too risky. Maybe they fear rejection or direct confrontation, or they haven't learned how to assert themselves directly, so they use these indirect methods.
So it's often coming from a place of fear or lack of skill.
Very often. The key insight here, and it's a profound one from the workbook, is that most destructive conflict patterns are actually ineffective and often very harmful ways of trying to feel safe or feel heard or get legitimate needs met. They just don't work well.
Understanding that doesn't excuse the behavior, though, right?
Not at all. But it can help you approach your partner's difficult behaviors, and even your own, with a bit more compassion. It shifts the frame from, you're doing this to me, to what need is not being met here, or what fear is being triggered. It allows you to address the behavior while still trying to understand the root cause, and then, crucially, insist on finding healthier alternatives for moving forward together.
It reframes the conflict from just a personal attack to maybe a signal. a clumsy, painful signal, but a signal nonetheless of an underlying need or hurt.
Exactly. And that opens up possibilities for real change.
All right, now we move to something incredibly empowering. We've identified some of the problems, those destructive patterns. Now let's talk solutions. Let's turn the page. Dr. Attalla's workbook introduces what it calls core communication tools.
The good stuff.
Yes. And these are not just abstract concepts. They are presented as evidence-based, really practical skills, things you can actually learn and use to transform how you navigate disagreements.
Moving from those destructive patterns we just talked about into more constructive, maybe even healing dialogue.
Exactly. So these are actionable techniques that, with practice, and that's key, practice can fundamentally shift the dynamics of your interactions. Ready to break them down?
Let's do it. These are the skills that make resilience possible.
Okay. First up is mutual validation. This feels like it must be a really foundational tool.
It absolutely is. It's often the first step needed when emotions are running high. The purpose of mutual validation is simple. Acknowledge your partner's perspective, let them know you hear them, you see them, even if you don't agree, while also expressing your own feelings and needs.
So it's not about giving in, it's about acknowledging.
Precisely. The how it works is often framed with a simple formula, though it doesn't have to be rigid. I understand you feel ew, and I feel ews.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's use that busy schedule example. You might say, okay, I understand you feel overwhelmed and stressed by how busy we've been lately, and at the same time, I feel disconnected and a bit lonely because we haven't had much quality time together.
Okay, so you're stating both realities, theirs and yours.
Exactly. The power here is huge. Validation doesn't require agreement. You don't have to agree with their perspective or think their feeling is justified to validate that the feeling exists for them.
That's a key distinction.
It is. It simply requires acknowledgement, saying, I hear you, or I see this is hard for you. And when people feel genuinely heard, even if you don't share their exact viewpoint, they are far more likely to calm down, to feel less defensive, and to actually open up and listen to your perspective in return.
It creates breathing room.
It creates a shared emotional space before you try to tackle the factual disagreement or the problem solving. It lowers the temperature.
That makes so much sense. But I imagine for some, the challenge might be, how do you genuinely validate someone's feeling when their perspective feels completely illogical or maybe even hurtful to you? How do you bridge that gap without feeling like you're condoning their viewpoint or saying they're right?
That's a really important nuance, and it goes back to that core idea. Validation isn't agreement. It's about acknowledging their subjective experience of the situation.
In reality.
Yes, their emotional reality in that moment, even if you disagree vehemently with their interpretation of the facts, you can still say something like, okay, I can see how, from your perspective, that would feel incredibly frustrating, or, wow, I hear the hurt in your voice when you talk about that, and that's clearly real for you.
So you're validating the feeling, not necessarily the story attached to it.
Precisely. You're acknowledging the emotion is present and valid for them. It allows you to connect on an emotional level, to build that bridge before you get into the, okay, now let's look at the facts as I see them, or let's figure out what happened. It's a crucial first step. Okay, next tool. Broken record.
Broken record. Okay, this sounds like it could prevent so many of those frustrating circular arguments where you just keep saying the same thing over and over.
That's exactly what it's designed for. It helps you maintain your boundaries calmly and assertively without getting pulled into escalating arguments or needing to constantly justify yourself.
How does it work in practice?
The technique involves calmly, neutrally repeating your position or your boundary, using the same or similar words without getting drawn into debating it or defending it extensively.
Like a, well, broken record.
Exactly. Imagine this scenario. Your partner says, maybe accusingly, you never want to visit my family. Your response, using the broken record technique, could be a calm, clear statement like, I'm willing to visit your family once a month.
Okay, just stating your position.
Right. Now, if they push back, that's not enough. It feels like you don't care. Instead of defending, well, I do care, but, or getting angry, you calmly reiterate, maybe adding a touch of validation. I understand you'd like more visits. I am comfortable with visiting once a month.
You just keep repeating the boundary.
You calmly repeat the core message. You're not adding new arguments, not getting defensive, not escalating. This tool is powerful because it prevents you from getting pulled into those endless cycles of defending or explaining your boundaries over and over again.
It stops the jading, justify, argue, defend, explain.
Exactly that. The broader implication here, connecting it to the bigger picture, is that using broken record consistently helps build respect for personal limits in the relationship. It teaches your partner, gently but firmly, where your boundaries lie, and helps prevent resentment from building up when those boundaries are repeatedly tested or crossed.
Okay, that makes sense. Next up is probing. You called it being like a detective for emotions earlier.
Yeah.
I like that. Getting to the core of what's really going on underneath, that feels really powerful.
It really is. Probing aims to understand the deeper need, the underlying concern, or the core feeling that might be hidden behind a surface level complaint or criticism. Because often what's being said out loud isn't the real issue.
The presenting problem isn't the root problem.
Exactly. The technique works by asking curious, open-ended, non-judgmental questions to gently get beneath those surface issues.
What kind of questions?
Things like, okay, what specifically bothers you most about that situation? Or help me understand what you really need from me in this situation. Or what's the feeling underneath that anger for you? Or even what would need to change for you to feel better about this whole thing?
So they're genuine questions, not accusations in disguise.
Absolutely. The tone has to be curiosity, not interrogation. This is invaluable because, as we said, the stated problem often isn't the root cause. Maybe the argument about being late isn't about time, but about feeling unimportant. Probing helps you address those deeper underlying issues, which leads to more meaningful conversations and more sustainable resolutions, rather than just patching over the same recurring surface symptom.
Getting to the why behind the what. Okay, now clouding. That sounds intriguing. What's that about?
Clouding is a really clever, almost counterintuitive technique. It's for responding to criticism, especially criticism that feels overly broad, generalized, or maybe a bit unfair, but might still contain a tiny grain of truth.
Okay, how does it work?
The idea is to find that kernel of truth, however small, within the criticism, and acknowledge it non-defensively while still maintaining your overall position or perspective. You essentially agree in part without agreeing with the whole accusation.
You cloud the criticism by agreeing with a piece of it.
Kind of. Let's take an example. If your partner says, maybe in frustration, you never help with the housework, ever, which is probably an exaggeration, really.
Usually, yeah.
A clouding response, instead of outright denial, that's not true, or defensiveness, might be something like, you're right, I haven't been keeping up with the dishes lately, or, you're right, I could probably help out more with the laundry.
So you find something specific and true within the never.
Exactly. Or if they say, you just don't care about my feelings, instead of, yes, I do, you could try clouding. I can see how my response earlier came across as uncaring. Or, you're right, I wasn't really listening properly when you were talking about that.
Ah, okay, so you're acknowledging their perception or a specific instance.
Right. This technique is brilliant because it immediately reduces defensiveness on both sides. You're acknowledging a valid point, which makes your partner feel heard, and it shows them that you are capable of hearing their concerns, even if you don't fully agree with the entirety or the extremity of their statement.
It prevents that immediate shutdown or counterattack.
Precisely. This simple act of partial acknowledgement can often prevent a full-scale argument by disarming the critic. It shifts the dynamic away from accusation versus denial and towards potential understanding or problem-solving on the specific point you acknowledged.
That's really smart. It takes the wind out of the sails of the big accusation while still allowing you to hold your ground on the parts that aren't true without needing to fight about it.
Okay, and then there's assertive delay. You framed this earlier as hitting pause in the middle of an emotional storm. That really does sound like a superpower for so many conflicts.
It kind of is. It's about self-regulation. What's the biggest challenge people face when they first try to actually use an assertive delay? It sounds simple, but I bet it's hard in the moment. How does the workbook suggest overcoming that hurdle?
That's a great question. The biggest challenge is often that immediate, almost instinctual, biological urge to react right now. When we feel attacked or misunderstood, our fight-or-flight system kicks in. We feel we must defend ourselves, correct the record, or solve the problem immediately. Delay feels counterintuitive, even weak sometimes.
Like you're letting them win by not responding instantly.
Exactly. Or that the problem will just get worse if you don't tackle it now. The workbook emphasizes that recognizing this urge feeling, that knot in your stomach, that racing heart, that need to lash out or fix it, and then consciously choosing to override it, is the crucial first step. It takes practice just to notice the impulse without acting on it.
Mindfulness in the heat of the moment.
Pretty much. Assertive delay is about giving yourself permission and maybe even explicitly asking your partner for permission to take time to regulate your emotions before responding. We know that intense emotions hijack our rational brain.
Yeah, logic goes out the window.
Totally. So we end up saying reactive things we often regret later. The how it works is typically a simple, clear statement, something like, you know what, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I need some time to think about this. Can we please pause and revisit it in an hour? Or maybe even tomorrow morning when we're both calmer.
So you state the need for a pause and suggest a specific time to return?
Yes, the specific time is important. It signals commitment to resolving the issue, not just avoiding it indefinitely. This prevents those reactive, regrettable responses that only escalate conflict further. It creates crucial space. Space for your nervous system to calm down, space for thoughtful reflection, space for intentional communication rather than a heated, impulsive, damaging reaction.
It's a deliberate act of self-regulation, but it benefits both partners immensely, like putting on your own oxygen mask first.
Perfectly put. You can't communicate effectively when you're emotionally flooded. Assertive delay is the emergency brake that allows you to regain control.
All right, now we move to a framework that Dr. Attalla introduces, Dear Man. Okay, I admit, at first glance, the acronym, the structure, it might sound a bit formal, maybe even robotic for a relationship conversation. But I think its power lies precisely in that structure, especially when stakes are high. Can you walk us through how this really helps in those moments where you need to be absolutely clear about a need or a boundary?
You're right, it can feel a bit structured initially, but Dear Man is an incredibly effective tool from dialectical behavior therapy, adapted here for couples. It's an acronym that provides a clear, step-by-step approach to expressing your needs or making requests clearly and effectively, maximizing the chances your message will actually be heard and understood, especially when the topic is sensitive. It minimizes ambiguity and emotional escalation.
Okay, let's break it down, maybe with an example, like that one you used before about weekend plans always falling through.
Perfect, let's use that. So Dear Man stands for D, describe. First, you describe the situation using only objective facts. No interpretations, no judgments, no blame, just the observable behavior.
Okay, fact-based.
So for example, the last 3 Saturdays, we had plans to spend the day together, and each time something else came up that led to the plans being canceled or changed. See, just what happened.
Got it. No, you always bail on me.
Exactly. Next, E, express. Share your feelings about the situation using I statements. Focus clearly on your emotional experience, not on accusing your partner.
Own your feelings.
Yes. So, when that happens, I feel disappointed and honestly a bit hurt. I start to feel like our time together isn't a priority. Notice it's I feel, not you make me feel.
Right, subtle but important difference. Okay, D, describe. E, express. What's A?
A, assert. This is where you clearly and specifically state what you want or need. Make a direct request. No hints, no ambiguity.
Be direct.
Very direct. I'd like us to really protect our Saturday plans going forward. I'd like us to agree not to schedule other things during that time unless we specifically discuss it together first and both agree.
Clear request. Okay.
R, reinforce. Explain the positive outcomes of getting your need met or express appreciation for them considering your request. This helps motivate your partner and shows the benefit.
Why it matters or the positive payoff.
Exactly. If we could do that, it would really help me feel more secure and connected in our relationship, and I'd look forward to our Saturdays so much more. Or, I'd really appreciate it if we could make this work. It frames it as a potential win-win.
Okay, DEAR. What about man?
Man focuses on how you deliver the message. M, mindful. Stay mindful of your objective. Keep the focus on the current issue, the Saturday plans. Don't get sidetracked. Resist that powerful urge to bring up past grievances or other unrelated problems.
Avoid the kitchen sink.
Avoid the kitchen sink at all costs. Stay on track with the specific request. A, appear confident. Use a steady tone of voice. Maintain appropriate eye contact, not staring aggressively, but connecting. And adopt a reasonably confident posture. Speak clearly, without mumbling or apologizing excessively for having needs.
Body language matters.
It communicates as much as, if not more than, your words. It reinforces that you believe in the validity of your request. And negotiate. Be willing to negotiate. This is crucial. You're making an assertion, not an ultimatum. Show flexibility and a willingness to collaborate to find a solution that works for both of you.
So be open to alternatives.
Yes. If protecting every Saturday feels too difficult right now, could we commit to maybe 2 Saturdays a month that are just for us, or is there another day that would work better consistently? This shows you're looking for a workable solution together, not just making a rigid demand. It fosters teamwork.
Wow. Okay, dear man. Describe, express, assert, reinforce. Stay mindful, appear confident, negotiate. That's a lot to remember, but I can see how incredibly helpful it would be, especially for those really tough conversations. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? As you said, it might feel a bit formal, maybe even unnatural at first, like you're reading from a script inside your head.
It might, initially.
But this structured approach, especially something like Dear Man, truly empowers clear communication. It forces you, in a good way, to organize your thoughts beforehand, to get really clear on your actual need, and then to present it in a way that is much less likely to trigger defensiveness in your partner.
And much more likely to lead to genuine understanding and hopefully resolution.
It's like building a strong, clear pathway for your words to travel, ensuring they arrive intact and are understood as intended instead of getting lost in emotional static.
Well put. And knowing when to use each of these tools we've discussed is also key. It's like having a toolkit, right? You wouldn't use a hammer to saw wood.
Good analogy. So, quick recap. When would you pull out each tool?
Okay, generally speaking, you'd use mutual validation right at the start, especially when both people are upset and need to feel heard before you can even think about problem solving. It builds the foundation.
Got it. Validation first?
Broken record is perfect for when your boundary is being clearly challenged or you feel like you're being pressured to change your position on something important to you. Calm repetition.
Boundary defense. Yeah.
Use probing when you have that gut feeling there's a deeper issue lurking beneath the surface complaint, when you need to gently dig for the why.
Detective mode.
Right. Use clouding when your partner makes a criticism that has some valid points mixed in with exaggeration or unfairness. Agree with the kernel of truth.
Partial agreement.
Assertive delay is your absolute go-to when emotions are running high, yours or theirs, and you know you need time to cool down and respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. The pause button.
Essential safety tool.
And finally, Dear Man is invaluable when you need to make a really clear request about an important need or set a significant boundary, and you want to maximize your chances of being heard effectively.
The structured approach for clarity.
Exactly. It's about having this full toolkit and developing the wisdom to know which tool, or maybe combination of tools, is right for the specific job at hand in that particular conflict.
Now, for a moment, let's turn the lens inward. This feels really important. Before you even think about using these tools with your partner or analyzing their behavior, it's vital to honestly examine your own patterns, your own history, your own tendencies when it comes to conflict. Dr. Attalla's workbook wisely emphasizes the power of self-reflection here.
This internal examination is incredibly valuable. It's often the missing piece, because if you don't understand your own contributions to the dynamic, it's hard to change it effectively. Self-awareness is always, always the first, most critical step toward any lasting change in relationships. It's about understanding the raw material you're bringing to the table.
And a lot of that material comes from our past, right? Many of us carry habits, beliefs, even fears about conflict from our family of origin straight into our adult relationships, often without realizing it. Dr. Attalla asks us to reflect on that directly.
Yes, it's a key reflection point.
So for you listening, think about your family growing up. What did you learn about conflict? What was modeled for you? Was it safe to express disagreement? Was it ignored? Did it escalate into hostility or scary fights? Or was it handled constructively?
What was the feeling around conflict in your childhood home? Was it danger, tension, resolution, or maybe just silence? If you never saw a healthy conflict resolution modeled, it's incredibly hard to just magically know how to do it intuitively as an adult.
You just repeat what you saw or maybe react against it in an equally unhelpful way.
Often, yes. So this self-reflection is about identifying those potentially ingrained patterns. Like when you get upset in a relationship now, what's your immediate tendency? Is it to attack, criticize, blame?
Or maybe the opposite.
Right. Or is it to avoid, to shut down completely, withdraw emotionally? Or maybe you try to fix things immediately, smooth everything over, even if the issue isn't really resolved. What's your go-to protective mechanism in an argument? Because it often developed early on for a reason.
And thinking about this too, do you feel like you have to win arguments or be right? Is that important for you to feel okay about yourself afterwards?
That's another crucial piece of self-awareness. Is your goal in conflict genuine resolution and understanding, or is it more about personal victory, proving your point, not losing? The motivation matters immensely.
I'm thinking about your current relationship. What's the most common argument pattern you fall into? How does it typically start? How does it escalate? Can you see a predictable dance?
Identifying that repetitive cycle is huge. And as we delve deeper into our own behaviors during conflict, it's worth asking yourself honestly, do you ever find yourself listening just to plan your rebuttal?
We talked about that block earlier. Rehearsing,
Exactly. Are you truly trying to understand your partner's perspective, or are you just waiting for them to pause so you can jump in with your counterargument? We've all been there, mentally composing our brilliant comeback while the other person is still speaking. It's a habit worth noticing.
It really is. It completely undermines true connection and understanding. And what about defensiveness? What specific behaviors or topics are guaranteed to trigger defensiveness in you? What button gets pushed?
And more importantly, what are you protecting when you get defensive in those moments? This isn't about judging yourself, but about cultivating curiosity. Are you protecting your ego? A past wound? A deeply held belief about yourself or the world? A fear of being wrong or inadequate?
Understanding the root of your own defensiveness that helps you predict it, maybe manage it better when it flares up.
Absolutely. These aren't easy questions, are they? They require real honesty. But the answers, even if they feel uncomfortable, are just data points. They're valuable information for your own growth. They provide clarity on where you need to focus your efforts.
Okay, so we've looked at history and triggers. Now let's pivot slightly from looking at our own internal landscape to examining our current actual conflict behaviors. How do we act now? For instance, are you able to take responsibility for your part in conflicts, even if it's small? Or do you tend to focus only on blaming your partner?
This is absolutely fundamental for healthy relationships and effective repair. Accepting accountability for your contribution, owning your piece of the dynamic, no matter how small you think it is, can instantly disarm a tense situation. It signals you're not playing the blame game.
It takes courage, though.
It does. Also, consider this. How long do you typically stay upset after an argument? Do you tend to hold grudges, maybe replaying the fight in your head for days? Or are you generally able to repair relatively quickly and move on once the issue is addressed? This speaks volumes about your emotional resilience as an individual and impacts the relationship's overall climate.
Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right. That's the classic saying, and it's true. It damages you and the connection. Now, this raises an important question the workbook implicitly asks. Why do we repeat patterns we know aren't healthy? We might recognize, yeah, I shouldn't kitchen sink, or I know shutting down isn't helpful, but we do it anyway. Why?
What's the typical reason?
It often comes down to familiarity and a sense of safety, even if that safety is ultimately dysfunctional. Old patterns feel known, comfortable, even if they're destructive. Trying something new, like validation or assertive requests, feels vulnerable, risky, unfamiliar.
Devil you know.
Exactly. But the empowering message is that through intentional practice, consciously choosing a different tool, even when it feels awkward, and through self-compassion, not beating yourself up when you slip back into old habits, but just noticing and trying again, we can absolutely break free from those old patterns. It's not fixed.
Okay, that's hopeful. Finally, as we reflect on ourselves, let's consider growth and the possibility of change. Ask yourself, what would you most like to change about how you handle conflict in your relationship? If you could wave a magic wand, what one thing would you improve in your own approach?
Identifying that specific desire for change gives you a target to aim for.
And then, what stops you? What internal barriers get in the way of you using healthier conflict resolution tools like the ones we discussed, especially when you're actually upset? Is it fear, anger, lack of practice, not knowing how? Understanding these personal roadblocks is key to overcoming them.
It truly is. And developing that internal sense, that emotional intelligence to know when you're actually ready and calm enough to have a difficult conversation versus when you recognize, nope, I need more time to cool down, that's a skill in itself. It prevents so much damage.
Honoring your own need for a pause.
Yes. And maybe think about this as a motivator. What does repair look like for you after a disagreement? What helps you feel reconnected? And then the big picture question. What would your relationship actually be like if you personally got really good at handling conflict constructively? Imagine that possibility. Visualize.
That would change. How would it feel?
That vision of a more connected, resilient relationship can be an incredibly powerful motivator for putting in the effort to change those old habits. And finally, what support do you need, maybe from your partner, maybe from resources like this workbook, maybe therapy, to break those old patterns and develop these new, healthier ones? Acknowledging the need for support is a strength.
Okay, we spent some important time looking inward. Now let's gently shift focus and consider the other side of the bridge, as Dr. Attalla might put it. How did your partner experience conflict with you? This isn't about blaming them, or even necessarily having a live discussion right now, but more about providing a framework for thinking empathically about their experience, which can inform future dialogues.
Yes, this is crucial. What's fascinating here is the potential insight gained just from trying to genuinely see the conflict from your partner's viewpoint. It's a powerful act of empathy, and empathy is absolutely essential for fostering deeper understanding and breaking negative cycles. It shifts you out of being stuck solely in your own perspective.
So as you reflect now, think specifically about your partner. When you argue based on their reactions, their words, their body language,
Yeah.
do you think your partner generally feels heard and understood by you? Or do they maybe tend to feel dismissed, criticized, or attacked?
How do they typically react to you during conflict? Do they withdraw? Do they escalate? Do they get defensive? Do they try harder and harder to explain themselves? The reactions are often a mirror reflecting back how your communication is landing for them.
That's a powerful thought. Their reaction is data about my impact.
Exactly. If your partner often feels dismissed or misunderstood, it might be a strong signal that your validation skills or maybe your listening skills need some attention. Another crucial thought exercise from this perspective is, how do you think you could make your partner feel safer and more comfortable when you need to address problems or bring up difficult topics together?
Thinking proactively about creating safety for them.
Yes. This question invites you to consider solutions from their perspective, thinking about their triggers, their sensitivities. What could you do differently in your approach to foster more trust and openness from them? That's a powerful way to shift the dynamic before a conflict even starts.
That requires real empathy. And as we continue exploring these shared patterns and triggers from their side, consider this. What topics or specific situations are most likely to spark conflict between the two of you? Are there recurring themes? Those same old arguments that keep resurfacing again and again.
Recognizing those predictable triggers as a couple is a first step toward anticipating and hopefully diffusing them before they blow up. And think specifically about your partner's biggest triggers during conflict. What specific things, maybe a certain tone of voice you use, a particular phrase, bringing up a certain topic consistently make them feel most unsafe, most hurt, or most reactive?
Knowing their hot buttons.
Precisely. Understanding this isn't about walking on eggshells, but about choosing your words and approach more skillfully to avoid unintentionally escalating a situation. If you know, for instance, that interrupting them consistently makes them shut down, you can make a conscious effort to let them finish speaking, even when it's hard.
It's about being strategic for the sake of connection.
Exactly. And also, how do your different conflict styles, perhaps stemming from your different families of origin, interact? Maybe one of you is a pursuer, let's talk about this and I'll show you, and the other is a withdrawer. I need space. How does that dynamic play out between you?
That pursuer-withdraw dance is so common.
Very common. Understanding how your styles clash helps you see the pattern itself as the problem, not just your partner. And thinking about the aftermath, how long does your partner typically need to cool down after a disagreement? What does a good repair process look like for them? What do they need from you specifically to feel truly reconnected and know that things are okay between you?
It might be different from what I need.
It very well might be. For some, it's a heartfelt apology. For others, it might be simply spending quiet time together. For others, it might be revisiting the issue calmly later to ensure understanding. Knowing their specific repair language is key.
Okay. Exploring all of this, even just internally in our own minds first.
It lays incredibly powerful groundwork for change. When you start considering these points, maybe journaling about them, thinking about them during calm moments, it can be profoundly transformative for how you approach conflict in the relationship. It's about building a shared language and a deeper, more compassionate understanding of your unique conflict dance as a couple.
It helps you see the pattern, not just the person. Okay. And finally, building on that understanding, let's think about creating better conflict resolution together. Again, maybe initially just as a thought exercise for you, the listener. Consider this. Which of those communication tools we discussed today, things like mutual validation, broken record, clouding, probing, assertive delay, dear man, which of those do you think would appeal most to your partner? Which ones might they find easiest or most helpful to receive from you?
And conversely, which tools might feel most challenging or unnatural for them to use, or maybe even to receive initially? Maybe Dear Man feels too confrontational for them, or maybe validation feels difficult if they weren't raised with it.
So it's not just about what tool I like or want to use, but about considering what might work best for the dynamic for them too.
Absolutely. This helps you tailor your approach. Maybe you introduce tools gradually, or focus on the ones that seem like the easiest wins for both of you first. Understanding your partner's preferences and challenges Makes it a more collaborative effort towards better communication, rather than you just trying to impose a new system.
That makes sense. Collaborative change. What else should we consider for building better resolution together?
Thinking practically, how could you signal to each other, maybe agree on a code word or hand signal, when one of you needs to pause a difficult conversation using assertive delay? Having a pre-agreed signal makes it much easier to implement in the heat of the moment without the other person feeling abandoned.
Like a relationship safe word for arguments?
Kind of, yeah. And what ground rules do you think would help both of you fight more fairly and constructively? Things you could potentially agree on together when you're calm.
Like no name calling.
Exactly. Or we stick to the current issue, we take breaks if needed, no threats of ending the relationship during a fight. We commit to listening to understand, not just to reply. We both try to own our part. We prioritize repairing quickly afterwards. These kinds of agreements create a safer container for conflict.
And maybe thinking about this, how can you remind each other, maybe even verbally during a disagreement, that you're actually on the same team? Your partner's facing a problem together, not adversaries trying to win against each other.
That simple reframe, hey, remember we're on the same side here, let's figure this out together, can instantly shift the entire dynamic of an argument from combat back to collaboration.
That's huge. And maybe asking yourself, individually first, then
Yeah.
perhaps together, what would need to change for you both to feel like conflict actually brings you closer, reveals more understanding, rather than creating distance and resentment? What would that look like in practice?
And finally, how could you celebrate or acknowledge when you do handle a disagreement well, when you use the tools successfully, when you repair effectively? Reinforcing those positive patterns helps them stick. A little, hey, we handled that tough conversation really well, I appreciate how we listened to each other, can go a long way.
Okay, so we've covered the why conflict happens, the destructive patterns, the constructive tools, the importance of self-reflection, and considering your partner's perspective. Now, the crucial part, putting it into practice. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in practice? Because this isn't just about understanding these concepts intellectually, it's absolutely about doing something with them.
That's the critical step, isn't it? The workbook naturally includes activities, but we can reframe these as incredibly practical suggestions or mental exercises for applying these tools in your own life, starting today.
Because these are learnable skills, right? But like any skill.
Like any other skill, whether it's learning to play the piano or speak a new language or get better at a sport, they require consistent practice. You can't just read about them in a book or hear about them on a deep dive like this and magically be great at them. You have to actively engage with them, try them out, maybe feel awkward at first, and keep practicing.
Okay, so for those ready to move beyond just theoretical understanding to actually trying things out, what are some ways to internalize and practice these concepts, maybe even starting internally?
Well, one powerful internal exercise involves that mutual validation piece. The workbook suggests maybe taking time, perhaps in a private journal or just in your thoughts, to consider one current frustration you have in the relationship and, importantly, one genuine appreciation you have for your partner.
Okay, one frustration, one appreciation.
Then, mentally construct how you could articulate these using that validation format. I understand you might feel about topic, and I feel about it. And also, something I really appreciate about you is this isn't about actually saying it yet, necessarily, but about shifting your internal framework first. Practicing holding both the frustration and the appreciation simultaneously, and framing the frustration with understanding. It moves you towards curiosity and connection even before you open your mouth.
Practicing the mindset. I like that. What about dear man? That seemed pretty involved. How can someone practice that without feeling overwhelmed?
The suggestion is often to practice Dear Man first on a relatively low-stakes issue. Don't pick the biggest, most contentious topic in your relationship for your first try.
Good advice. Start small.
Yes, choose something simpler, maybe related to chores or scheduling or a minor annoyance. Then mentally, or maybe even write it down or say it out loud to yourself first, outline your points for each letter. Describe, express, assert, reinforce. Think about how you'll stay mindful, appear confident, and be ready to negotiate.
Verse it privately.
Exactly. Then, when you actually have the conversation with your partner about that low-stakes issue, try to follow your structure. Afterwards, reflect internally. How did that feel compared to how I usually communicate about things like this? Did it bring more clarity? Was it easier or harder? What would I adjust next time? This deliberate practice builds both confidence and competence with the framework.
Makes sense. Practice on the small stuff first. What about reinforcing healthier habits over time? Building consistency.
Here, the idea of a weekly relationship check-in, as suggested in many relationship resources, including implicitly here, can be incredibly effective. It's preventative maintenance.
Like an oil change for the relationship.
Exactly. Propose setting aside just 15-20 minutes, maybe Sunday evening, consistently each week, not to hash out major problems, but just for relationship maintenance. The structure can be simple. Maybe take turns sharing one thing that went well in your communication or connection that week. Then maybe share one small irritation, unmet need, or point of friction using the tools like I statements or validation. And finally, ask each other, how can I support you better this coming week?
So it's proactive and uses the skills.
Yes, it keeps communication channels open, reinforces using the learned tools for the small issues that inevitably arise before they fester and become big conflicts, and builds a routine of positive connection.
I can see how that would make tackling bigger issues less daunting if you have this regular practice. Okay,
Yeah.
what about practicing something like clouding? That seemed useful but maybe tricky.
For clouding, the suggestion might be to practice internally first, or with hypothetical complaints. Think of criticisms you sometimes hear, or maybe dish out. You're always late, you never listen, you spend too much money. Then, practice mentally finding that kernel of truth and formulating a clouding response. You're right, I was running late this morning. Or, I can see how it might seem like I wasn't listening when I was on my phone. Or, you're right, I probably could be more mindful of our budget. Just practicing finding that partial agreement can make it easier to access in a real conversation. Reflect on how it feels to mentally give and receive that kind of response. Does it feel less defensive?
Like building muscle memory for that skill. And what about just generally getting better at choosing the right tool?
There's a great mental exercise described, almost like conflict tool matchup. Imagine taking those main tools we discussed: mutual validation, broken record, clouding, probing, assertive delay, dear man, maybe even writing them on virtual flashcards in your mind. Then, the next time you find yourself in a mildly tense conversation, or even just reflecting on a past one, ask yourself internally, okay, which tool would have fit best here? Or, what could I try right now?
Actively thinking about the toolkit during interactions.
Exactly. It helps you move from just knowing the tools exist to actually considering their application in real-time or near real-time situations you face. When would probing be most helpful here? Is this a moment for assertive delay? It makes the learning active.
And the ground rules idea, how to personalize that.
For the conflict resolution ground rules, the suggestion is often to start individually. Brainstorm for yourself first. What specific behaviors during conflict make you feel unsafe, unheard, or make you want to shut down? What would make you feel safer and more respected during disagreements?
Get clear on my own needs first.
Yes. Then perhaps you could think about what common guidelines you would want to commit to in your important relationships. Using the samples, no name calling, stay focused, take breaks, no threats, listen to understand, own your part, repair quickly which of those resonate most strongly for you. What would you add? This prepares you for a potential conversation with your partner about establishing shared rules because you're clear on your own perspective first.
Makes sense. And finally, that repair ritual idea. How do you design something like that?
Designing your own conflict repair ritual is a really powerful, personalized activity. Again, start with self-reflection. Ask yourself, how much time do I typically need to genuinely cool down after a significant disagreement before I'm ready to reconnect constructively? What signals to me that I'm ready? What specific actions or words from my partner help me feel like the rupture has been repaired and we're okay again?
So understanding my own process for reconnection.
Exactly. Then, if appropriate, you can have a conversation with your partner about their process too. A repair ritual doesn't have to be elaborate. It might involve elements like taking responsibility for your respective parts in the conflict, I own my part in, expressing what you learned or how you'll try to handle it differently next time, explicitly reaffirming your commitment to each other and the relationship, and maybe including some form of physical connection, like a hug or holding hands if that feels good and safe for both of you after a conflict. Having a clear, agreed-upon ritual makes that crucial step of reconnecting after the storm much smoother, faster, and less uncertain. It turns a potential rift into a predictable moment of reinforcing the bond.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. As we wrap up this deep dive, drawing from Dr. Nader Attalla's incredible couple therapy workbook, let's just circle back to the core message. What's the main takeaway here?
I think the fundamental takeaway is that conflict, when it's approached with the right skills, with clarity and care, is not actually a threat to love or connection. It doesn't have to be destructive.
In fact, it can be the opposite.
It can be. It can actually be a doorway to deeper understanding, greater intimacy, and a more resilient bond. The goal here isn't, and probably shouldn't be, to never disagree. That's neither possible nor even healthy in a real, vibrant relationship where two distinct individuals are trying to build a life together.
Differences are inevitable.
They are. So instead, the goal is to develop the skills, these tools we've talked about, to navigate those inevitable differences with respect, with genuine curiosity about each other's perspective, and with fundamental care, even when you're upset.
It's about learning to see conflict as valuable information, maybe even an opportunity, rather than just a threat. And crucially, learning how to repair quickly and completely when things inevitably go off track, because they will sometimes.
Absolutely. And that leads to that profound truth we touched on earlier. The strongest, most enduring relationships aren't the ones that are magically conflict-free. That's a myth. They're the ones that are conflict resilient.
Resilient, meaning they can handle it.
Yes. They've learned how to absorb the shocks of disagreement, how to process the friction constructively, how to repair the ruptures effectively, and how to actually emerge from conflicts stronger, with greater trust and intimacy, not weaker.
So by committing to learning these tools, validation, probing, dear man, all of them, and really practicing them consistently, even when it feels awkward.
Which it will at first.
Right. You actually transform conflict from something that divides you, something that builds those walls, into something that can genuinely bring you closer together in the long run.
You learn how to weather those storms together, maybe even learn to. Well, the metaphor is dance in the rain together. You find connection even amidst the difficulty.
That's a beautiful thought, isn't it? Turning towards each other even when things are hard.
And zooming out for just one moment, connecting this to the bigger picture, it really boils down to making a conscious choice again and again. Every disagreement presents that choice. Are you going to use this moment to build another brick in the wall between you through blame or withdrawal? Or are you going to try, however imperfectly, to use it to build a bridge of understanding, using tools like empathy and validation?
Walls or bridges.
When you consistently choose bridges, you choose growth, you choose connection, you choose a love that actually gets stronger through the very challenges that could otherwise tear it apart.
That feels incredibly hopeful. So in the end, maybe it comes down to this. How you fight matters far more than what you fight about most of the time. The process trumps the content.
Well said.
So as you, our listener, go about your day, maybe just hold this thought. What's one small step you can take today, maybe even in your own thinking, to consciously choose a bridge in your most important relationships? What one tool we discussed might you experiment with, even just internally?
That first small step is often the most powerful.
Keep exploring, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep growing. Thanks for diving deep with us today.